Hey everyone, it's LS, and this is going to be the patch 11.13 notes rundown, and finally we are getting an absolutely massive patch that Riot is finally dropping on us. So let's just get right into it. Normally these types of patches of this size often come around mid-season, and then it ends up going very slow for a while. For some reason, it's coming around 11.13. This patch does not feature Action or the new Yordle that is coming out. You guys might have seen it on Reddit. The concept art for the Yordle is also there, the Gloomy Artillery Mage, but nor is the Sentinel of Light, 80 carry, marksman, whatever, going to be in this patch. So, unfortunately, you'll probably have to wait until next one, I think. He'll probably end up being inside of or something. So, let's just get right into it. Okay, Aphelios, passive bonus damage and lethality increased. Passive the Hitman and the Seer. So, TLDR, basically, Aphelios gets 6 extra AD. When he finished maxing his bonus damage upgrade that he can get, and lethality at the very end of it all, he ends up getting 6 extra lethality, which is also quite a nice little thing. So Aphelios has been getting quite a bit of buffs over and over and over. I think, again, all of these buffs are mainly centered at solo lane Aphelios. So mid lane and top lane Aphelios more than 80 carry Aphelios. The reason I say that is because obviously when you're talking about base levels and base values, the champions that, or the things that are going to benefit the most from that are going to be the people who get the most EXP, which is going to be the mid laners and the top laners due to the solo EXP income. So, these Aphelios buffs, Fudge wasn't lying, okay? Aphelios top, it is a real thing. And so I think that if Riot keeps going in this direction, depending on what they do with items and whatnot, you could end up seeing another marksman move over into mid or top lane. Right now, traditionally, we just sort of have, we have Corki, we have Lucian, and we have Callista. There have been instances where Draven does go into a solo lane, but Aphelios is probably another one of those viable picks. Anyways, Kayn. W visual effects now revealed when in terrain. Blade's Reach visual is now revealed when cast within terrain towards enemy champions. Okay. Lee Song, E base damage decreased later. Okay, base damage. Still going to stay the same at rank 1, so we're still going to be obnoxious there. And then 140 to 130 is going to lose 10 per rank there. And then at rank 3 is going to lose 20. So it ends up, he's losing 40 damage. So the thing about this is Tempest, you can basically max E or Q, and depending on matchup, for Lee Sin. It makes it very hard to itemize against him. And the thing about this is it's going to kill a lot of his matchups up in top lane. It's going to get, well, not kill, but it's going to make it a lot easier to manage. This combined with the other nerf that they did to his E is definitely going to help keep him in check. Do I think that it'll necessarily completely move him out of being played? Probably not. He'll probably, some teams or some players are still just going to randomly select him at some point in time, but it is an absolutely massive nerf that cannot be understated. The other place where this is super big is obviously inside of jungle, where, again, you don't get access to the highest base levels super early on, and so jungle Lee Sin actually feels the pain on this one way more than top Lee Sin, but top Lee Sin is obviously what they're going for. Olaf, base health growth increased, mana and mana growth rounded up, so he gets 7 HP a level. This is a pretty big deal. He's just getting a lot of HP out of nowhere. Yes, he is hurt by a lot of the item changes that have been going on. No, he's not in the greatest of spots right now inside of the jungle. He's sort of a joke. And the only real practical ability that he has to be picked inside of a pro game is generally when he's going to be paired with enchanters, or champions that are going to support him. Seraphine, Karma, Soraka, Yuumi, things of this nature. If they're going to be present, Olaf was already somewhat of a justifiable pick, but what ended up happening is he just became the poor man's Udyr. And Udyr was just always sort of outperforming him, and unless, again, those enchanters were there, because Olaf had a bit of a different way to reach people than Udyr did. So in that regard, just getting more HP, it's not necessarily going to change things all that much. He is going to have probably about an auto attack worth of extra EHP or extra HP now in early game skirmishes or at the dragon or something. Maybe he'll have 2 extra auto attacks inside of him at that dragon, so plays a part there. Riven, E base shield strength reduced. E Valor, base shield strength is going to go down by 10 per rank. So Riven's a champion. This is obviously aimed at SoloQ. It's not going to be influencing competitive whatsoever, and it just feels like it's something that's being thrown out there because data or whatnot. I don't really know where or how it comes from, but it comes from somewhere, yes. Rumble, W cooldown increased early and now scales. Bonus movement speed decreased. Okay, so cooldown is going to go up by 1 second. And the bonus movement speed will... Okay, well, the bonus movement speed is also going to be down. So both of these are obviously just tagged at Rumble inside of the jungle. Thing about this is there was the Reddit comment that showed that Rumble had some overheat bug, which was why he was able to be doing the things that he was doing. I'm not actually totally sure on how this 1 second at level 1 interacts with his overheating inside of early game jungle clears. Probably have to check out Freak's patch note rundown for that. I'm off the top of my head as I'm doing this. I am not totally certain on it. Do I think that it's going to magically move Rumble outside of the jungle? No, I just think that people will be forced to maybe come up with different ways to clear, optimize certain things, but Rumble is definitely way too oppressive in so many different spots, and given that, again, he can be flexed into other roles and he retains that as a possibility even with these changes, it's just something that's not going to really move him from competitive or solo queue. Tahm Kench. This is a sad one for me. For you guys that do not know, I used to pretty much only play Tahm Kench on stream. He was definitely my most played champion for quite a while, and I had a lot of fun with Tahm, and it makes me really sad that I think that he's probably gone in the way that everyone pretty much knew him. I think that, so I'm going to read all the changes here in just a second. I'm actually genuinely sad right now. I think Riot probably killed him, and from all the talks that I've had with pro players who have seen the changes that were on the PBE, the general consensus was he's just not viable. And we'll just get right into it, I guess. It's just really, really sad. So base stats health is going to go down by 30. His health growth is also going to go down by 5, so he's just losing a lot of HP. And now losing a lot of HP also means that he's losing damage on his passive. Okay, so mana growth is also going to go down. It's going to be 40, or mana growth is actually going to go up, 40 to 50, so he's getting more mana. Now, that was a thing that he could use some help with, so don't get me wrong on that front, but it feels very random. Armor also going to go down by 5, and then magic resistance is going to go down by 0.1. Okay. So that one's just a cleanup. Passive and acquired taste. So he's losing 1.5% of his maximum health. This is actually a really, really, really big deal for Tahm in mid game and in late game. It's smaller early on, yes, but it's still something, and it definitely does hurt. So it's not something that should necessarily be scoffed at. Q Tongue Lash. So here's the change on this. Tahm Kench can now cast our Devour during Tongue Lash to swallow enemy champions stunned by Tongue Lash. So if you ever wanted in the past to have 3 stacks on the opponent and be able to QW them from range and devour them and bring them to you, well, now you can. The same way that you could do this to minions before, monsters and whatnot, that's pretty much what it is. Tongue Lash now heals for 6 to 10% of his missing health when an enemy champion is struck. So the missing health part is where this gets really, really, really cute. Because missing health or missing HP or current HP and all this other, all these types of numbers that Riot loves to use, those are the ones I hit the most. Generally, I'm only usually a big fan of max HP unless the missing HP number is really, really, really high. If it's really high, 10% I don't consider to be really high. I don't think it really means anything. So to give you guys some perspective, let's say in mid-game you're missing 100 HP and you hit the Q. Wow, you get 8 back. So if you're missing 200, you're going to end up getting 16 back. Now, if you have Revitalize, this will go up a little bit. But the thing is you're not chaining Tongue Lashes together. And even if you are, the amount of missing HP that you're going to be getting in early laning phase is going to be so pathetically low, it doesn't do anything. Even in the later stages of the game, let's say that you're a support Tahm Kench, because the direction that Riot's trying to go with him is the support avenue. Let's say that you're missing 300 HP. Wow. You're missing 300 HP, throw out a Tongue Lash. If you're in range to hit a Tongue Lash, most likely, in mid or a late game team fight as a support, you don't have as much HP, and that's probably going to be the one Tongue Lash that you ever get off. Maybe you'll get, 2 or 3, depending on like the length of a team fight or who the enemy champions are focusing. But generally, with the combination of thick skin and other stuff, this is not actually equating to the kind of healing that I think people are envisioning. Now, in top lane, if you're in a melee matchup and you are spamming this, It's going to matter to a certain extent over time combined with the new thick skin, but there's no way that the trade-off that you're going to be losing everywhere else is somehow making this justifiable, especially not with the prevalence of grievous wounds in the game on pretty much everyone's kit. Everyone has an Oblivion Orb these days. Everyone has Chemtech Putrefier as an enchanter. Everyone has Executioner's Calling. Everyone's building Bramble. It just feels like even if the base numbers that Riot set in place for a champion are there, it just feels like how practical it is given the current nature of itemization across pretty much everyone. It makes it really hard for those base numbers to shine. Anyways, Tongue Lash now reapplies a stack of his passive. Early Tahm Kench connoisseurs definitely remember that. And the slow percent, it's going to be changed to just a flat 40%. Now, going up to 70, 60, 50, that stuff was gross. Don't get me wrong. The 40% means that, your level 1, your level 2, your level 3 is pretty much where you're gaining some. Well, actually, it's just level 1 and 2. At level 3, you'd be back to the old slow percent if you were playing him again in top or jungle or something like that. So that's kind of sad. Slow duration is going to go down from 3 seconds to 2 seconds, so it actually means that it's kind of worse. And the cooldown, 5 seconds, is going to go up early game, and then it's going to scale back down to 5. So you get access to the old Q duration at level 9. Wow, great, cool. The cost is going to go down. Now, this combined with the thing with his mana growth up in top does make him have more sustain in lane, combined with the missing heal and whatnot. And so, again, in certain matchups, maybe you can just play super defensive and just try to perma-Q spam. But honestly, the girth on it it's leaving much to be desired. I'll tell you much. I'll tell you what. So harder, better, faster, stronger. Tongue Lash's range and missile speed now scales up with Tahm Kench's size. This is sort of incentivizing you to go Frostfire Gauntlet. One of the things that I am wondering, because we'll get to it in some of his other abilities, if you guys hadn't already seen my rundown on Tahm Kench, is that his AP ratios are really, really, really high. So I'm wondering if he goes some sort of variation of the early Gwen builds where Gwen would sometimes go Frostfire Gauntlet and then go Nashor's Tooth and then things of this nature, because Nashor's on Tahm Kench is very interesting combined with his passive because he can do some combos that actually have insane damage. But again, if you're going to be going Frostfire plus Nashor's, you're probably needing to play him inside of a solo lane. He can't go into the support role. So W, Abyssal Dive. So this is the new change. No longer can you eat foes. Instead, you can eat them by, well, you can go down under and then come back up. Anyways, Tahm Kench channels for 1.35 seconds and dives for 0.5 seconds, then appears in the target area during 100 to 240 low base, plus 100% AP damage, knocking up enemies for 1 second, hitting an enemy champion refunds 30% of its cooldown and mana cost. Okay, so the cooldown is going to be 21 to 17 seconds. So, early game, if you hit this, yeah, you get 30% of it back, but you're only really hitting it once inside of a combo. So Tahm Kench can take devoured allies along for the ride, which means you have to use your R on them. And allies can always eject before the channel finishes. Enemies cannot see where Tahm Kench is headed until 0.75 seconds into the channel. So the range on this is very short. So he's got some problem with his girth on his tongue, and now he's got some issues with his length. So it sounds like Tahm Kench he's down bad. So basically what's happening is this ability looks like it's really good for jungle setup. It looks like it's also really good if he was just a jungler or if he was a top laner and he goes into a brush or something. As a support, he can go into a brush and he can also start a gank with Abyssal Dive. But that one, again, I guess in concept, that's probably the idea that they have going for him. But I'm not totally certain if, I don't know. It just seems really weird. And again, you're not getting access to base levels. So the cost on the mana is very high, but fortunately, I don't believe that you put points into this until later on. So all the mana that you're getting from the Q reduction and mana growth and whatnot, it's going to help out. Ethic Skin, shield duration 2 to 2.5 seconds, but this is kind of impractical. There's very few instances where you're actually going to utilize the whole duration of the shield. This is something that I always talk about when it comes to shield champions, when you're looking at shield values. This is why sometimes seeing, shield buffs on a champion does not always actually equate to the kind of buff that people might anticipate it to be, because opponents have options to just either wait through the shield or they're already on cooldown. And so this adds more skill expression, I guess, to his E and to a certain extent, where you can time it maybe a little bit better at higher levels. Slightly increased to 10% max HP per quarter second. And now, time before Grey Health healing, 2.5 seconds of not taking damage, 4 seconds of not taking damage. So that one is also a little bit weird. R Devour. So this is his new, they moved his old R to his W. Tahm Kench swallows the target champion for up to 3 seconds. If the target champion is an enemy, they must have 3 stacks of passive plus an acquired taste. And then they take, again, 100 plus 15% maximum health plus 5% per 100 ability power. This is what I was talking about Nashor's earlier on, maximum health as magic damage. Now, the thing about these values, again, is Tahm doesn't have penetration. So whenever people talk about champions with damages or whatnot, they have to ask themselves, does the champion ever really get pen? And if the champion doesn't really get pen, then you have to do a deep dive into how practical it is that they do certain things. So you get 100 here, you get 100 from the deep dive that you have up above, so you have 200 right there, and then you also have your Q, right? But this one does have 15% plus 5% per 100 ability power. Now, even if you get 2 AP items, because mages are they're in the rough right now. It's not very good. You're gonna maybe get this up to 25% maximum health as magic damage. And then you'll have the 100% on the W. And then the Q, I don't believe it says the AP ratio here. So it doesn't actually say the damage. I believe the AP ratio is 70%. I could be wrong, but I think that there is actual justification for including Nashor's Tooth maybe inside of his build. But that's pretty much it. Anyways, so Tahm Kench swallows the target champion for up to 3 seconds. They must have 3 stacks. And Tahm Kench is also grounded and slowed by 40% movement speed. So if you take Phase Rush, or if you take Swifties, you can get some interesting combos, obviously, inside of laning phase with this, just like the old Tahm Kench could. But also, if he eats an ally, then they get a 300 plus 100% AP, again, the AP thing, shield that lasts for 2.5 seconds after Devour ends. Tahm Kench is also grounded and slowed by 40, 25, 10% movement speed, but can still cast W Abyssal Dive. So the fact this goes down solo is definitely good. He can W to reposition them, but the thing is that if he takes damage, it's interrupted. So it's really weird. And again, the whole thing about shields, if you eat a main carry and instantly spit them back out, if you eat a hyper and insta spit it back out and you have some ability power, if you're a support, let's be honest, it's only 300. It's 300 plus 100% AP. That's it. Okay, 300, great, cool. Maybe you have a little bit of ability power. Let's say 350. Okay, you eat Aphelios, you eat Jinx, you eat Senna or something, you spit her right back out, and boom. That's where it's going. Now, I don't think that Senna Tahm Kench has probably moved away from being a possibility with the changes here, because now actually they have more sustain. Senna and Tahm have more sustain, and also if Senna lands her Sneer, then Abyssal Dive is guaranteed to hit. Something along that line. And obviously now with the shield, Tahm can probably actually protect Senna more, which means that it's pretty weird. You only get 1 eat per fight. The cooldown is really, 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 really long. You only get 1 eat per fight. In competitive, you typically only get 1 eat per fight as well. But now opponents can actually try to force the eat out of you very early, and then you're on a massive cooldown. So it's not as safe as earlier on. So now there is going to be nuance between him and Thresh. Anyways, I spent a lot of time on this. I just want to see TLDR. Tahm Kench got on his boat. He never came back. It's totally fine, you know? Yeah. Viego, Q healing from minions decreased. E-base movement, Q healing from minions decreased. E-base, I can't speak. Viego Q healing from minions decreased. E-base movement speed. E-base bonus movement speed. Missile speed and zone length increased. Okay, Vape Nash. Q, Blade of the Ruined King, 100 to 50% on healing from minions. So they're trying to move him, obviously, into the jungle. Doesn't necessarily mean that this is going to happen. Obviously, in easy Viego lanes, he's still going to be fine. And then E, Harrowed Path, a.k.a. Vape Nation. base bonus movement speed 20 to 25%, okay, and then it scales up to 35%. So it's just a flat 5% movement speed. It's basically getting tier 1 boots extra. The missile speed comes out a lot faster, and the zone length is, okay, 75. So it's definitely a change, and yes, it is centered at jungle Viego. So the thing about Viego is I feel like every single team in competitive are playing him like hot garbage. They're trying to play him like a bruiser that goes in and does damage. They're using offensive heartbreakers, and they're just trying to play him as if you would a Renekton or a Wukong or something. And I think that's actually the total opposite way of how you should be playing him. Viego is essentially AD Katarina in a sense, and I don't mean the actual AD Katarina who itemizes AD and then continues to, whatever, all over you. But Viego, everything about him is just centered about the possession. So he just needs to get the possessions inside of the team fight, which means that he should actually play akin to the champions that enter fights late, or enter fights at opportunistic moments. So you're thinking like Katarina, you're thinking Master Yi, you're thinking defensive Ornn, you're thinking defensive Rumble, you're thinking any types of champions like that just sort of like sit back and let the party start, and then he gets in there like Pink. Totally fine. Maybe, you know what? Honestly, some of you guys listening right now, you might not even know who Pink is, and that's a tragedy. I'm old. Okay, so Viego and the Vape Nation, I feel like most people are playing him not super well. You should be playing him with the idea to wait for fights to break out and go in at opportunistic times, because it's all about the possession. That's what he comes down to. The way that pro teams usually draft inside of competitive, Viego is oftentimes very rewarded because people do not draft themes or against themes and identities inside of comps, which means that Viego often will find himself in spots where people are just trying to bump uglies, and everything comes down to the possession. Doesn't matter if the Viego team is behind. If he gets the possession, he can turn things around. It's a very scary minigame, but also a very exciting one as a spectator. And so in that regard, I think that nothing about this is really being changed, and I think that jungle is probably his best role anyway, and so that's totally fine. Viego only really needs to go to like 13 or something anyway inside of a game to still be useful. Xayah, Q base damage per feather blade and maximum total damage increased. Q, double daggers. Okay. Base damage per feather, 45, so it's up by 5. Base maximum total damage, 90 to 100. So this is fine. Xayah's just getting a little bit of love. I think she's in a pretty bad spot. I know that people were picking her. I know that, I consider her pretty bad. She's not getting picked as much anymore, thank Lord. But people they are a fan of Xayah, and unfortunately, I just think that she's not in a very good position compared to other marksmen who are just able to itemize way better and way more effectively with generally cheaper items. Xayah is a very heavy AD carry, and generally should only come in as a response to certain team compositions and whatnot. So, anyways, moving on. Anathema's chains. You guys might have seen this. I did videos on my main channel, the LS channel, about these two items. They're pretty sick. Gold value unchanged. Doesn't seem like anything about the items are changed, so I would recommend checking out those two videos on both Anathema's change and then also Hullbreaker, because I think that this item is super interesting. I go super in depth in that video. I think it's about 7 minutes long, and I think that Hullbreaker's video is, 8 minutes long or something. So both of them are pretty cheap, but go over a lot of different scenarios there. I would recommend just checking that out rather than bogging down your time here on this patch rundown. TLDR, Anathema's chain is really good at anti-individual carry. It's also really good if you're just very far ahead inside of the game, or you're a tank or a bruiser or something like that, and there's only one real threat to you. You build this item, you build up the vendetta against them, and suddenly you start becoming really, really, really scary. This item is also bonkers because of the 650 HP. There's a lot of champions in the game right now that they get a lot of resistances, but they're looking for some way to just get HP, and there's not a really good way to do it outside of Warmogs. And what if they already have Warmogs and they don't actually want Stoneplate or something? Well, this item is the solution for them. I feel like this is a massive buff for someone like Ornn, and I think Ornn is in a really good spot. The reason I think Ornn's in a really good spot right now is because all champions just keep getting hit. All of them just keep losing damages. All the items keep getting hit. Everyone just sucks, and when everyone sucks, Ornn gets better. So Ornn, I think, is probably just in a really good spot. This is a great item for him. It's a great item for other tanks. It's also a great item even for carries, because if the enemy only has one real threat to them, 650 HP for 2,500 gold, that is nothing to scoff at, and especially when you take reduced damage. So sometimes you might see a carry end up picking this up. Anyways, we move on to the mobility items. So this is the ability thing that everyone sort of talks about, and they're talking about like mobility creep and all this other, you know, nonsense and stuff. You can tell that I think that when people look at the numbers, they don't really think about what these number changes mean in a practical sense inside of a game. Let me tell you what, the amount of times that the movement speed reduction from these items are going to turn into either a life or a kill is so low. The percentage is so low. Especially in a sense that you probably could have just played different to make up for it than you otherwise would have, to the point where the nerf, had you just played more optimally in the isolated clip prior to these nerfs coming in, wouldn't have mattered. So let's actually take a look. So Stridebreaker is going up 200 in HP. It's going down 5 in damage, and it no longer lets the user dash their energy units. Okay, that one's big. This one's big. This is big. We're going to get to the other items, though. The Stridebreaker one, that's pretty big. Halting Slash can now be cast while moving. What? I don't understand. Huh? I don't understand what it means. I actually don't. I can't make sense of it. I don't know if maybe the patch notes broke or something, but it doesn't totally make sense. Halting Slash damage. Okay. So I'm assuming that it's an active that just you swing out now, but it doesn't make you dash, right? It just slows. Okay, that makes sense. Halting Slash damage 75% AD to 100% AD. Okay, so this makes up for the attack damage loss. Slow. 40% decaying over 2 seconds to 90% decaying to 40% over 3 seconds. 90% decaying to... that's a really... I feel like these are buffs in more cases than they're not. Cooldown 20 to 15. Heroic Gate, bonus movement speed. Okay, 30 to 20. Mythic passive, and then Dream Shatter. Oh, Dream Shatter. I didn't know that was the name of it for the Ornn upgrade. That's really big as well. And then Dream Shatter. Okay. Feel like in a lot of cases this is actually going to be a buff. So Stridebreaker in specific, because of this, okay, I could see it being a nerf. But I feel like in a lot of cases, this is actually just going to be a buff, especially if opponents have a team composition that has to run into you. Then it's just going to... I mean, everything else that you're getting is just absolutely insane. Galeforce, bonus passive movement speed. Okay, this is what I was talking about. 1%. Okay, what like 1%. Do you guys remember old Cloud Dragon that used to give you base movement speed? Do you remember that tweet? I think it was by Deficio or something, where like they measured the time distance that it would actually allow you to get from, you know, point A to point B on the map or something. And in most cases, it was 1 second or less. And so it just please, like, you gotta also remember how long it takes to get like 4 legendary items or something like that, like hyper late game or something. Lich Bane 1, 2%, ability power up by 5. I would call that probably a buff. But you know, I mean, it's sort of whatever. I would say it's probably a buff. It's super minor one. Cosmic Drive is going to go up by 5. Ability power, Spellblade, bonus movement speed, 10 to 30. So I really hope that this makes people stop building the item. The reality, though, is that generally you're around 20 movement speed anyway when you do complete the item. So it's not like you're losing out super much. You're just getting 5 more ability power, but you're losing movement speed later on. But again, if you looked at it, 10% movement speed on Lich Bane often granted higher movement speed than Cosmic Drive would actually give you. And so there was a lot of other stuff that was going on to Cosmic Drive. So Black Cleaver up by 50 HP. Carve is down. So this one I could sort of see. You are losing magical boots. You're actually losing a little bit more than magical boots. I could see that the Black Cleaver one is sort of a nerf, but then again, Black Cleaver in general is in a really weird spot, I think. Dead Man's Plate, Shipwrecker build-up duration, 6 seconds to 4 seconds, and now 60 to 40. Okay. Shipwrecked on hit bonus damage. Okay. Plus 100% base AD up to 40. So that is a interesting thing on any champions that have very high base AD. But it's also a combination now with Trinity Force, because Trinity Force modifies your total base AD. So in some ways, this is actually just going to be a buff, but I feel like most people were never building Dead Man's Plate for the active. I felt like they were building it for a minor combination of MS, but it was mostly also the HP and the armor. So I feel like in general that probably will be perceived as a buff. Trinity Force up by 5 damage, bonus movement speed down by 5, and then Infinity Force okay. This is I think a buff overall. And then Death's Dance, 10% of your maximum health to 15% of your maximum health. Death's Dance is a hyper-specific item. Champion takedowns no longer grant 30% bonus movement speed for 2 seconds. Generally, I feel like that was pretty luxurious when it would proc. Again, in a practical sense, I think that getting 5% back of your maximum health is generally better than 30% bonus movement speed. But again, I mean, sometimes 30% bonus movement speed is converted to getting an extra 5% of your maximum health due to being able to maybe dodge a skill shot or something. So again, it's a thing that's pretty nuanced. Shurelya's Battlesong, however, this one I think is big. 60% decaying to 30% over 2 seconds to just 30%. That one's very big. Don't get me wrong. This one's massive. That's a massive hit to Shurelya's. It does mean that some enchanters lose options, but it doesn't matter because I believe that Moonstone Renewer is also in this patch, and it's getting another buff. However, we'll see. Prowler's Claw, 60 to 90 seconds, 21 to 18, losing 3 lethality. Send swipe, enemy unit, enemy champion. So a lot of nerfs here to Prowler's Claw. This mostly affects the SoloQ menaces, which are like Talon, Qiyana, Zed, champions of that nature. All of them are getting nerfed, especially because the cooldowns now mean that it does not synergize with their ultimate. Which means that now opponents have less to worry about. So Prowler's Claw, it's not just the mobility nerf that's actually hitting this, it's the way that it interacts with the champions who oftentimes build the item is where the really, really, really big problem is going to come in. So expect to see a lot of champions' win rates drop due to the nerf of this item, all the champions that primarily rely on it and rely on abusing it in order to do things. So Mana Mythic, okay. Mage items finally getting some more love, 200 gold down. So the way that you can read this is that depending on the minion wave that you would normally be recalling on, this can actually help you anywhere from 45 seconds to maybe a minute and 30 seconds or something in advance. That is going to be coming in. So you can basically read this as maybe being able to get Liandry about a minute faster on average. Which is a pretty big deal. Same for Luden, same for Everfrost and everything else. This is just obviously a really, really nice change overall. The thing about Everfrost is that it's probably the least affected by the others because generally Everfrost, when we have the components for it, it's feeling pretty good. When you're having the components for Luden's Tempest and Liandry's Anguish and you're waiting to complete it, it feels pretty bad. But Everfrost, it does have a lot of component power as itself, and given the combined cost is so cheap, usually you get the components, you go back out, you lane for a minute and a half, 2 minutes, you come back, you get it. And so all this is going to mean is that it just comes online outright fast. Normally when they would have to wait on the component. Now combine this with Futures Market and you start getting some interesting things going on. So definitely very, very, very powerful for mages. Moonstone Renewer, Starlight Grace, heal and shield power, 6% per stack, max 30 to 7%, max 35. Now again, remember, Soraka, Lulu, Karma, Ivern, all of these champions can utilize this while in combat by themselves. So it's also an increase to all of their base values, but this is pretty bonkers. Just getting an extra 5% again on any of their shields and heals is super, super, super broken, especially if they have it coming in from other sources. You have the Revitalize, you have the Forbidden Idol items all coming in and amplifying heal and shield power. So that 5% is getting a lot of kicks, and it's definitely very, very good. So nothing to scoff at whatsoever. Moonstone just keeps getting buffed. Divine Sunderer, Empowered Spellblade, 12% of target's max health, 12% melee, 9% ranged of target's maximum health. So this is an outright nerf to Senna and Ezreal. We can thank them for the change to this, and Riot again trying to hyper cut down on some of that power that they were experiencing. I think this means that Ezreal, he might still go Sunderer and just accept that he's lost out on damage, or he might start shifting back to Trinity Force. We'll have to see what is going to go on there. Senna, I'm not totally sure what Senna is actually going to do now at this point in time. I'm genuinely curious where Senna is going to go with the direction of this. I would need to think about it more before trying to make a prediction on that. So Nimbus Cloak runes, 5% to 35% for 2 seconds to 5% to 25% for 2 seconds. So it doesn't do anything. I mean, you're taking a Nimbus Cloak for early on. You're not really thinking about it in the later stages. It doesn't do anything. Ghost Poro, granted sight duration 60 to 90, enemy reveal duration 4 to 6. That's a nice buff for Ghost Poro. Gives a nice healthy alternative for that row inside of Domination Tree. Turret update: inner turrets and side lanes, top and bottom, are granted an additional 250 local gold. That's really big, and with Hullbreaker and everything, that's really nice as well. And this is very good for any like split push mages or anyone. This is mostly, I think, going to be mostly a solo queue buff rather than a competitive buff, but it's definitely going to be very, very nice. So, okay. Summoner spell, Smite. Challenging and chilling Smite, giving junglers early access to true damage against minions, which especially punishing to early ranks of ultimate. Okay. Challenging Smite, damage to minions. 902 damage to 500 plus 10% of the target's max health. Okay. And then Chilling Smite, damage to minions, 900 true damage to 500 plus. Okay, so it's just making it so that like Daisy and all these other friends get a lot more value. This does give it's a micro buff, right? I mean, that's pretty much it. ARM balance changes, that's fine. And that is pretty much it. So this was actually a really big patch. We'll recap on some things. Aphelios, massive for competitive. Doesn't really do anything for SoloQ. Kayn, whatever. Massive. Lee Sin, massive for SoloQ. Massive for competitive. Olaf, mostly competitive-centric, but, might have some impact in SoloQ. Riven, it's all SoloQ focused. Rumble, big change for SoloQ and competitive. Tahm Kench, I think we can still see him, but it's not going to be the Tahm Kench that we used to know. And I think that for top and jungle and stuff of that nature, he's probably ruined. So, yeah, I mean, just make of that what you will. Viego and the Vape Nash, I think it's fine. I think that going into jungle as Viego is fine anyway. I think that generally if you're playing him adequately and stuff, then that is kind of where he belongs. In some lanes, he is just still going to be able to sustain through you. And again, he doesn't heal from every single minion that he hits with Q because of the nature of the lane. So even when he applies the Q to the minion, it doesn't mean that he's necessarily walking up and actually hitting it without actually taking damage to the opponent. So if you actually go through a lot of Viego first persons, he is not always healing off the minions that he hits. So there is some HP missing. It's not the end of the world, is basically what I'm getting at here. Xayah, competitive in solo queue. Anathema's Chain, really, really big. Hullbreaker, mostly solo queue. Might have it should have something in competitive, but mostly solo queue for Hullbreaker. Strikebreaker change is the biggest out of all of these other things. Everything else is sort of like whatever, except for Shurelya's and Prowler's Claw. Prowler's annihilates solo queue, annihilates, and then also really does harm the competitive viability of some of the champions that did utilize it, but I'm not going to say that it takes them out of competitive because competitive is a different realm, and it's much more controlled anyway. So you don't have the ability to just chain stuff over and over. The mythics on the items are huge for mages, so do not scoff at these whatsoever. Moonstone Renewer, huge. Divine Sunderer, Senna, and Ezreal are crying somewhere, and that is pretty much it. We're going to go into now the skins. So this is, I believe, Project Z Prestige Edition. You guys always know what I talk about Prestige Edition, okay? So, rather than spending your money on something else and needing an exorbitant amount to let people know that you are large and in charge, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, you should tune into a certain section on twitch.tv, and I think it's all going to be fine. But by having the Prestige Edition Z, you can let your opponents know that I mean, even if you lose, they're going to remember that you had that skin. They're going to be jealous, and that's the way that it goes with all Prestige skins. We move on to Maokai, and honestly, these like alien things, it reminds me of that Twitch emote that just dances, or the dancing alien in Twitch, if you guys know what I'm talking about. It's very cute. All the astronaut skins are absolutely adorable. It's one of my favorite skin lines in the entire world. And then here you have Veigar and you have Rammus, and I like it as well. Unfortunately, I no longer believe that this means that Veigar will be getting any buffs or anything like that. We saw it with Bizahar, and unfortunately in that department, he never got any buffs. So I don't think that it means that Veigar is going to be getting any buffs. However, I think the skin is absolutely adorable. It is super cute. Now, Rammus, He ends up looking like the what was his name? The spider from Mega Man X4. If you guys know what I'm talking about, the spider stage. Yeah, that's exactly what he looks like here. So this is Corki. So Corki, I mean, Corki probably looks, I mean, he looks the most like he's like piloting a mini UFO. This purple alien in the back, honestly, I would love to see this as a pet. For some champion, once upon a time, maybe there's like a UFO or like an extraterrestrial. That's pretty interesting. There's a UFO skin. Well, aliens exist inside of the lore, but yeah, I mean, Aurelian Soul's literally like a Star Forger. But anyways, like it would be really, well, I guess we kind of do have some alien, but like a traditional alien champion, okay? That'd be fine. Actually, for all you know, this is actually Zach's father, so it's totally fine. Looking like Majin Buu. Anyways, some of the chromas, as you guys can see, do look very, very, very cute, and this is what I meant by the web spider thing from Mega Man X4. This looks exactly like him, the green chroma. But yeah, I mean, that's exactly what it reminds me of. So I think that this is Veigar. I definitely think that the base skin looks probably the best for it. Yeah, I think the base skin probably just ultimately looks the best. I think everything else is a little bit too much over the top, which I'm a little disappointed by, but not the end of the world. And then obviously the Corki one, this is really cute. This is super, super, super cute. The base skin, definitely really good. The bubble pink one, also a respectable one. And then you obviously have this baby blue one, which is very, very cool as well. The yellow one's not quite gold enough to look like a prestige skin, so you can't really, do that, but doesn't really matter. Anyways, 11.13, first really big patch. 11.14, probably going to have Akshan, the new Sentinel of Light marksman, who I think is designated to be a mid laner. And then I believe the Reddit thread also said that the Yordle will be revealed, but not come out until like August or something like that. The gloomy Yordle, our artillery mage. So really, really, really excited for them. I hope that Riot does not do the thing where they say that neither of them are going to be allowed for Worlds, because this is outright, this is something else. But anyways, guys, that was pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed this patch rundown. It was extremely long, and yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one.